Thanks so much, Ben, for coming. I feel very honoured that you've managed to find some free time, and we're all really looking forward to hearing this panel. I think it's going to be really fascinating to have the combination of founders and investors. And I know that you've been on both sides of the table. You're an investor now, but you have been an entrepreneur. What's the difference? What do you like, what you don't like about both sides?
Tonight I was at an event earlier and a woman asked me that exact question. She had just become a VC and she had been an entrepreneur and she said, I really miss it. I'm like, yeah, I always do. She said, how do you get over that? And I'm like, well, you never do. Like my favorite investors, David Z and I were talking about this once and he was like, I always have that itch. And I think having been an entrepreneur, you when you see something really exciting, you get that itch again. And I love that. It's just that I get to live vicariously through so many entrepreneurs that's even more addictive. Right? The other thing is, I think I would compare it, look, no male can have a comparison to childbirth, it's just not relevant, but I believe that the only reason anybody ever has two children is that they forget the pain they went through to have the first one. So I think entrepreneurship can be like that. You remember all the glorious, wonderful things, that baby looks in your eyes, that special moment, but you don't necessarily want to remember all the hardship, right? So, I don't know, maybe I'm a little bit realistic about there was awesome stuff, and at the same time, those were long, hard journeys, and they always will be. There's nothing easy about entrepreneurship. It doesn't get easier, it's just you get better. And if you work really, really hard, and you also get lucky and have great timing, then miraculous things can happen, but, it doesn't stop being hard pretty much ever.
I love your take on that. It's fantastic. I had 3 children myself and ended up raising them all by myself, so I so know what you're talking about.
We have 3 and I haven't had to raise them all by myself, so I'm very lucky.
Exactly. So tell me, what's your passion as far as being an investor and what's brought you into the FinTech domain?
So FinTech has been interesting, important, and exciting to me since 2007 when I first found Lending Club and invested in them. I started talking to Renault in 2007, I think put the money in 2008. And then after that, it was all kinds of interesting businesses in the space. Cabbage, which was a balance sheet lender. Realty Mogul, which is a woman out of LA that has sort of done Lending Club for real estate in some ways. Neighborly, which is a space that creates a transparent environment for people to trade municipal bonds or underwrite municipal bonds. I funded Earnest, I funded Circle Up. I mean, there's a lot of great FinTech businesses. And part of it is sort of, if I think about people often say, well, what do you focus on today, just generically? And the short answer is finding the next multi-billion-dollar public company. And if you're going to find that, it's likely going to be in an enormous industry that hasn't been disrupted yet, or some technology that changes the world. And so FinTech categorically has enormous amounts of influence in the United States, I mean, just everywhere, all around the world, right? These are huge businesses. So as an example, right now, my focus within FinTech has been more precisely in insurance tech. I funded Zenefits when they first launched. I funded a small company called Cover as a seed investor. I funded, as a seed investor as well, Health IQ. So these are companies, and I've looked at many others, and I'm really interested in this for Canvas, that are attacking insurance and trying to find a way to provide more value to the entire ecosystem. The insurance industry, these companies are bigger than banks. There's a reinsurer in Europe I know that does $300 billion in revenue a year. These are staggeringly enormous industries, or businesses within the industry. And that's just super exciting because they have not been touched by technology until very recently. So when you find smart people, great ideas, big visions in big industries, that's what excites me no matter what it is.
It's like a whole minefield, really, of opportunity, right?
Yeah, it can be. I think in FinTech it's been maybe almost too much attention, right? Because I was talking to an entrepreneur that ended up spent a bunch of time with, and I like their model, but I said, look, I invested in vanilla ice cream when it was created. That was Lending Club. Then I invested in chocolate. That was Cabbage. Then I did strawberry. That was Realty Mogul. I'm not sure I'm ready to do like Tutti Frutti with sprinkles. There's a lot of great businesses to be built, and they can be bigger than a lot of other businesses can be. But at the same time, I get really excited when it's new. And so the next flavor isn't always necessarily the case, which is probably why I'm spending more time on the insurance side, because that is new now. And then it's the last white space left. Or maybe it's not. Maybe there'll be another one I'll discover after insurance tech, and then I'll be all excited about that.
And tell me what you, if you can remember a really amazing learning experience or opportunity or something that's happened since you've been an investor that you'd like to share.
There's been a bunch of times, at least half a dozen, where I've realized how much candor can provide value to entrepreneurs. I used to think back to people that helped me, and they were the ones that were candid, even if they were gruff. And so it took me a little while, but in the end, I finally just became that same person. I'm not ever trying to be a jerk. It's just I have no filter. It's sort of, I was an entrepreneur for 25 years. If an entrepreneur is pitching me and they've got their hour slot and it's not a fit for me, I'd like to believe I can provide some value. And the most likely way to do that is to give them very candid feedback. And so there's many stories around this, but I remember the very first one. I was at an event, not dissimilar to this, and this guy comes running over. And I recognize him, but I'm not sure where from. And he's like, Ben, it's so great to see you. I'm like, yeah, great. Tell me about that. And he's like, remember, we met like a year ago. I pitched you that deal. I was like, oh, yeah, but I told you the only way you could possibly fund it was in a crushing down round that would be enormously dilutive to you, and you'd get recapped, and you shouldn't raise money. And he's like, yeah, you did. And I was like, I would have thought you didn't like to hear that. He's like, no, you were the only guy that told me the truth. We spent like 3 months trying to get money, and you were absolutely right. And when we finally figured it out, it got easier because we had to come to terms with that. But he was like, you were the first person and probably the only person that would just tell us that to our face versus being nice to us. And it was sort of interesting because this was someone I passed on. Passed on pretty aggressively. And I've had a second version of that where the person has become a great source of deal flow. I passed on their opportunity, and yet he sends me entrepreneurs. And he says, look, whether Ben funds you or not, he's going to be candid with you. And that has, with maybe 3 exceptions in 10 years, one of which might have been yesterday, unfortunately, always done well by me. Candor has been something I've learned people value. And I'll make one last point. What I think intrigues me about it is the more I think about it, like when you're candid with somebody, you're really putting yourself at risk. Right? It's much easier to give them some little, it's really interesting, a little more traction, not a fit for us, gotta go with it, or whatever BS you want to spew. But when you want to give them honest feedback, what was so hard and so scary was they could get really angry at you. And you're putting yourself out there with like, this is what I believe. I could be wrong, but it doesn't change that it's what I believe. And that was a heartening learning when it came back in a positive way.
So cool that you've got so much integrity and you're actually conscious about providing that to others. Thank you so much for coming tonight. I feel totally thrilled about this. And I think we're going to have a great panel. Thanks.
Thank you.